What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football, and we are continuing our Week 9 previews. This is the Wednesday slate, another doubleheader in Conference USA. If you like this content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. It really does help a small channel like this as we try to grow and make something out of this channel. Thank you if you've done that. I really do appreciate it. If you have a request for later in the week, we do a request show on Friday talking about a lot of the G5 games that we missed. Please leave it in the comments below and I will try to get to your game. Lastly, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's dive into these games. I want to say one more thing on Conference USA quickly. You can wait till kickoff to bet these games. Last night on the Tuesday slate, we saw more shenanigans. Western Kentucky started their backup quarterback, citing injury to Maverick McIver, but Maverick McIver was not on the injury report. That happens a lot in this conference. So if you wait, injuries pop up out of nowhere. The injury report comes out 1 hour before kickoff. So just want to highlight that. We were also able to grab a half point by doing that on the FIU game right at a key number. We took a 3.5 instead of a 3, which doesn't really happen unless there's something weird going on. Did it matter? No. But did we get it? Yes. I guess we can take that moral victory. Middle Tennessee takes on Delaware. This game has an 8.5 point spread in favor of Delaware. The total in the game is 55 points. So to get here, it's been a very disappointing road for Middle Tennessee, including an FCS loss in their opener. Their only competitive game was against Nevada. They won 14-13 with a 50% post-game win expectancy, and they lost yards per play 4.7 to 6.2. That was much earlier in the season. Since then, they've gotten blown out to Marshall. They lost to Kennesaw State in reasonable fashion, 24-16. And last time we saw them before their bye, they lost to Missouri State 22-20, and they actually had a 57% post-game win expectancy. So that was probably the best this Middle Tennessee State team has looked since they've begun Conference USA play. That was a weird game. We saw a lot of missed extra points, missed field goals. Missouri State missed one from 48, and they missed an extra point. Obviously, you hit both of those. The game looks a little different, but Middle Tennessee missed a field goal too. Middle Tennessee fumbled on their own 37 that essentially gave Missouri State a touchdown. They had another turnover on downs inside Missouri State territory, a couple more at midfield. Just kind of a messy game overall with the turnover on downs and then real bad kicking woes. But I don't really think that's getting better for a lot of these Conference USA teams. Anyway, Delaware, they have some kicking problems themselves. They've looked a lot better so far this year, and they've played better teams too. Colorado, that's a rightful loss. Kind of is what you expect, but they played UConn really close. They actually won 44-41, even though they had a 27% post-game win expectancy. So that's definitely a feather in their cap. That's a good UConn team. They slaughtered FIU, and then they just lost to Western Kentucky by 3 points in a game they probably should have won. They threw a pick 6 and fumbled on the Western Kentucky 4, not to mention more missed field goals. And then most recently, we saw them lose to Jacksonville State. That was a pretty dominant loss. Yards per play was 6.3 to 5.2. But overall, I think it's been a better showing and a better body of work for Delaware, just across the board. They played the better teams. There are a lot of injuries in this game, so be aware of this. Amarian Walker, a wide receiver from Middle Tennessee, was out. They also have some rotating on the offensive line. It's hard to tell whether these are injuries or benchings. Zach Clayton and Marcus Miller are just names I'll throw out there, but this offensive line has been so bad, it's probably honestly just some rotating for Delaware. Jake Thaw returned, but then he didn't play in the second half of their most recent game. Now, a bye week should help them. We'll see. The bye's behind them, actually, so I don't know. They haven't had a lot of time to actually get over these injuries. Connor Whittoff at tight end, Dylan Traynor at linebacker, Anthony Crenshaw at linebacker. Those are just some names to watch. The most concerning one is Jake Thaw having left their last game. Starting with Middle Tennessee. Nicholas Vadiato has regressed, and this is a multi-year starter at quarterback for Middle Tennessee. A 60.5% completion, 6.1 yards per attempt, 4 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays, and 4 picks. Taking 15 sacks on a 25.5% pressure rate. He's doing a lot with a little, and I really want to emphasize the little part because his wide receivers have a drop rate of nearly 9%. This is probably a bottom 3 offensive line in the country. At best, it's bottom 10. I mean, this unit is 132nd in pass blocking, 128th in run blocking. Their tackles are so bad. Jacob Otts and Joseph Habanowski are unbelievably bad. They've tried to make some changes and rotate some guys. It just flat out hasn't mattered. This roster doesn't have the talent, and that's affecting everything. When your offensive line is bad, obviously that's going to affect Vadiata with the 15 sacks. He's done some of that himself, holding onto the ball. 23% pressure to sack ratio is high. But then you go to the receivers, and that drop rate being nearly 9%. You just look at who's out there. Like Nazay Cox he's their leader, 353 yards. Cameron Lacey, 273. But you just have a pretty weak receiving room. It leaves a lot to be desired. Their rushing attack is a little better. They're 83rd. Jakyle Middlebrook is kind of doing a lot with a little. 5.7 yards per carry, and most of that's coming just him individually. So it's a limited Middle Tennessee offense. You keep wondering if they're going to improve because they are pretty experienced, but ultimately that hasn't come to fruition. On the other side, Delaware's defense is impressed. They're 42nd overall, weakest unit being their pass rush, but they have a strength in coverage. That should help against this Middle Tennessee State team, which is throwing the ball at the 7th highest rate in the country. Now, they have allowed some success to certain quarterbacks. Ryan Staub, 8.6 yards per attempt. Joe Fignano from UConn, 8.9. But no one else was above 7.4, and they've done a pretty good job otherwise. On the ground, UConn hit them for 5.5 yards per carry. Jacksonville State, 5.1. But otherwise, they've stood up basically across the board. And they have some quality players at every level. Jack Hall and Dominic Brogna on the defensive line until you get such a good run defense. And KT Say has been awesome in the back end at safety. They're also rotating a little bit, and in a good way. They have this stud freshman, Jamarian Kolik-Bodie, who's playing more, at least in rotation, and he's been awesome. So that's really helped their secondary as well. With the edge rush and the good defensive line this Delaware team has, it's probably going to be troublesome for Middle Tennessee State to score the ball in this game. Now, on the other side, you have Nick Minicucci playing pretty well, 64.5% completion percentage, 7.7 yards per attempt, 11 big-time throws, 9 turnover-worthy plays, 12 sacks taken on a 27% pressure rate. All that's pretty good for Minicucci. He's mobile, and we've seen him evade pressure via his legs. The offensive line is also just much better. This unit already had 4 above-average starters led by 5'10 Bros, and they just returned Patrick Shupp. He played in a rotation last time out, but there's a real case he's the second-best offensive line on this team. Hopefully they return him to the starting lineup and give him a full-time role as he's removed from the injury further. And the skill players are just better. Joe Silver, excellent pass catching back, 19 catches. He's at 5.5 yards per carry. Kyrie Duplessis, the Coastal Carolina transfer, leads the team in receiving. And if they get Jake Thaw to play a full-time role again, which it's been injury that's limited him, that could really help this team overall. They're above average barely in receiving and rushing this year, with some room for improvement based on players returning from injury if we do get that news. Middle Tennessee's defense, I think, first of all, they haven't faced an offense ranked higher than 80th, Marshall being the best one. And they have allowed a lot of yardage really across the board. They've allowed 8.8 yards per attempt or better 4 times this year through the air to Wisconsin, Marshall, Kennesaw State, and Missouri State. They are better up front. That's where their best players like DeMonte Smith and Anthony Bynum reside, but you can beat this team over the top. So it's a bad stylistic matchup against Delaware. They're a fast team. They're a pass-heavy team, 16th in pass rate so far this season. I just don't really see Middle Tennessee State holding up in this game. We have more value on the under, and this largely stems from, a different way you could probably play this is just Middle Tennessee's team total under if you want, because the real crux of the argument is this Middle Tennessee State team likely has trouble scoring, and they still probably allow Delaware to score a lot of points themselves. We make it far enough below, and we took it actually outside this key number, 55 being the key number. We took it at 55.5. So there is the ability to potentially find that in the market if you want. But again, it largely stems from offensive inefficiency on the Middle Tennessee State side rather than the Delaware side, although Delaware has had some of their problems themselves. So we lean under in this game. As far as the spread goes, we do show some value on Delaware. We make this closer to -11. You could play that if you'd like. I'm going to wait for the injury report on that one just because we show a little more value on the under. But again, an alternate way you could potentially look at this Middle Tennessee State's team total under. I think that would be something worthwhile as well. Missouri State takes on New Mexico State. We have a 1-point spread in this game in favor of Missouri State. The total is 50 points. New Mexico State has taken some money. They've taken some of mine. So in this contest, we have Missouri State coming off a bye. Kind of a weird showing for this team overall. They lost to USC. They lost to SMU. Those are games you're not expected to win. They beat Marshall by 1 point, but they had a 92% post-game win expectancy. That game should have been wider. They lose to Western Kentucky, a game that was relatively close. And we just talked about the game against Missouri State. So where does this team go moving forward? Hopefully the bye helps them in this spot. They're just a little limited. We'll get to the personnel in a second. But New Mexico State, this is a team, they don't have the same high-level opponents at the top. They didn't play SMU. They didn't play USC. They actually beat a Bryant team, beat Tulsa, a game they probably should have lost, at a 44% post-game win expectancy there. They get blown up by Louisiana Tech, and then you're into conference play. And in conference play, they beat Sam Houston. There's not really saying too much there. They lose to Liberty 30-27. They actually cover the spread and look awesome in that contest in their most recent game. Since they got into conference play, it has looked better for this team. So where do we stand moving forward? Well, injury-wise, we don't really know who's playing quarterback for Missouri State. Jacob Clark warmed up in their last game, and then he sat out at the last second. Some real gamesmanship from Missouri State. There's a chance he's back, but some of the media stuff had Deuce Bailey out there, so I don't really know. It looks like they might go with Deuce Bailey, so this is definitely watch throughout the day, see if we can't get some news on the quarterback situation. But he's not the only one. Jamarie Robinson at receiver was out. Christian Loaiza at offensive line. It's kind of been a mess for them on offense. For New Mexico State, DeCare Cobbs, he's probably their best corner, second best corner maybe. He's been out. Tyler Martinez at linebacker. A couple offensive linemen have been out for a while now, so this isn't new. Santos Valdez, Kai Wheeler, and Makai Lee. Starting with Missouri State, Jacob Clark, just mentioned the situation. He was out their last game, but you look at him versus Deuce Bailey. Now, Deuce Bailey is a freshman. He's mobile. He does a lot of things on the ground, but completion percentage difference, Clark is at 64.5%. Bailey's at 48. Yards per attempt, Clark is at 8.8. Bailey's at 7.0. Big time throws, 11 for Clark. Now, he's played more time. It's the ratio we want to talk about. He's 11 big time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays. Bailey has 1 big time throw, 2 turnover-worthy plays. Pressure to sack ratio is actually in favor of Clark, and I think that's largely just because of the mobility of Bailey. He's very willing to duck out of the pocket and run. So they do different things, but Clark has been the better passer for this team. Bailey's better on the ground. Just a little breakdown of who plays for this team. But the offensive line is a little unsettled. They're a weird unit. They're very good in pass blocking, 48th, and horrific in run blocking, 135th. I think this team's just going to have problems overall. A right guard is still unsettled. They're rotating there. They only have one above average player. That's Eric Cade. And Mark Hutchinson's been a real liability. We'll see on this unit, but I'm not sure this is the best offensive line and infrastructure for this team. It's affected Shamari Lawrence, especially the running back, the FIU transfer. We are increasingly seeing Ramon Green, and he is actually their second leading receiver on the team. Definitely more efficient than Lawrence to this point, so that might be a change they make moving forward. But this wide receiver room is a little limited. They're somehow 60th overall. Alfred Luke leads the team with 335 yards, and we mentioned the second leading receiver is a running back. But I think that's probably because of injury. This unit's been banged up. Like James Blackstrain has missed 2 games already. He's a Georgia Tech transfer. Probably a little ceiling here if they can remain healthy. And the run game, we already talked about it, 111th. I think if they make that change, there's maybe a ceiling for more with Missouri State. But they're going to face a New Mexico State defense, which is largely untested. They're 89th overall, having faced no offense ranked higher than 84th, and that was Liberty. Really weird body of work. Both Blake Baker from Louisiana Tech and Jack Lane from New Mexico hit 11.1 yards per pass attempt, but no one else has been above 6.3. And they played some decent quarterbacks, especially in Conference USA. The run game is kind of the same thing. Louisiana Tech rushed for 5.6, but no one else has rushed for more than 3.8 yards per carry. And you look at this team, the run defense comes in a little bit better. I think that makes sense given their best players, Ezra Christensen, and he's a defensive tackle. They do rotate defensive backs a ton, which honestly doesn't make a lot of sense for me. I'm not sure this has always been good. Now, DeCare Cobbs has been out, so it's kind of what you get your best corner, arguably. misses time. You kind of have to rotate a little bit, but they still play Josiah Charles. He's been getting burned repeatedly. I don't know why they don't use more players like Zedekiah Rodriguez-Brown, who's been awesome on a small sample. Just kind of some questionable decision-making. So, yeah, if you can throw the ball, you can definitely beat New Mexico State at times. I'm not really sure Missouri State's equipped to do that. They try to throw a lot. They're 34th in pass rate. It's just not always the most successful. Now, having Jacob Clark back maybe would change that. But New Mexico State, their quarterback is Logan Fife. He has a 56.5% completion percentage, 17 Big Ten throws, 10 turnover-worthy plays, 4 interceptions. He's taken 18 sacks on a 28% pressure rate. His main problem is that 26% pressure to sack ratio. When he's kept clean, it actually looks pretty good. But when he's under pressure, he does take a lot of sacks, and he just flat out needs more help. The wide receivers have been bad. 10.5% drop rate. That's towards the top of the country. It's basically a top 10 mark for drops. And it makes sense when you look at skill players. First of all, the offensive line is bad. They've been very hurt here. We mentioned 3 guys up at the top, but they can't figure out tackle. And it looks like maybe they're benching Armando Neves for Elijah Harvey. That's a good change. But the other tackle is still a mess with Malik Williams. So they haven't figured this out, which basically puts them bottom 20 in overall offensive line, combining pass blocking and run blocking. Neither have been good. That hurts Fife, a pressure-sensitive quarterback. It hurts the run game. Both Kadarius Callaway and Dejon Stanley, their 2 awesome transfers, are below 3.8 yards per carry. Your top receivers, Donovan Fopple, 363 yards. Second is Gavin Harris, 296 yards. That's a decent at best receiving room, and you need help if you can get it from the O-line, which we just haven't really seen. Fortunately for them, I'm not sure Missouri State's defense really is a defensive line that's going to test this unit. They're 117th overall, and they're 128th in run defense, 102nd in pass rush. They are a little better in coverage, but man, I guess you could look at the opponents like let's move USC and SMU aside. The opponents we knew were going to dominate them. They allowed 8.1 yards per attempt to Maverick McIver. Otherwise, they've done a good job holding quarterbacks in check. They've allowed 5.8 yards per carry to Marshall. They allowed 5.5 to Western Kentucky. I just don't really understand what the defense is doing. You look at their statistics. Their best players are Mitchell Toney on the edge and Jalen Brooks at linebacker. They're both part-time players. If you remove them, which, I mean, you kind of have to because they don't play all the time, their best players are in their secondary, like Jordan Dunbar. So, I mean, if they're going to continue putting this weird lineup on the field, like Devon Townley, DJ Wesselak, Ryan Williams, Sterling Smithson, these are the players that are getting a lot of time on the defensive line. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Kanye Young at linebacker, basically every name I just mentioned has been below average with someone behind him who's flashed on a smaller sample. So I don't know. Maybe they need to make some changes. Maybe those players are only as good as they are because they play in limited roles. So you can score on Missouri State is the bottom line here. So in this game, we have New Mexico State as straight up the better team. I played them plus a 1.5. A +1 is still fine to me. We have this going through 0. A lot of chatter on the total. I think you could play an under in this game. Unlike the first game, pacing is poor. Missouri State is 97th. New Mexico State is 64th. That's right around average. So pass rate for both teams is high. Maybe that leads to a little bit of an elevated play rate, but man, both offenses in this game are not particularly good. The strength actually lies with the defense. But I mean, it's not really strength. It's kind of just weakness on weakness. So I think there are avenues where both teams score. I prefer the under if you force me to pick, but we're going to stay away from that for the time being and lean on the New Mexico State side. That'll do it for us. If you have requests for later in the week, please leave them. We'll be back again tomorrow talking the single Thursday night game. We'll hit the Friday games. We'll get to everything. Until then, thank you for watching. Good luck. We will see you later.